Well, Concorde.
This is going to be a metaphorical flight that'll take you to the edge of space.
When I was very young, I always wanted to be an airline pilot. And if you look at this, think of the Concorde flight deck and all those knobs and exciting flashing lights and all that sort of stuff, that fascinated me. Then, of course, the lure of music came in, and the amazing ability to actually sculpt the primary, one of our primary senses, and be able to make those sounds that had never been heard before and didn't exist in the real world was fascinating me. And to combine all those knobs and flashing lights and the music was irresistible for me, really. And as you can see, I've tried to, you know, make everything look as much like the flight deck as Concorde as possible.
I remember there was a kit on the front of probably Electronics and Music Maker or something, which had buttons instead of a keyboard that were like Space Invader game buttons.
Changing the division ratio in a digital divider, n is of course an integral number, we can build a divide by n sort of digital circuit, is as a...
I realised that there's no way I'd be able to make that, so I sort of waited and waited until there was something that I could kind of try and afford. I think I rented one from a local music shop for a while, so I could play with some friends, because we were trying to get a band together. And then eventually I managed to save up some money, and my mum helped me out a little bit, and I bought an MS-10, Korg MS-10. Because obviously back in those days, you know, polysynths were just a completely unaffordable luxury, you know, for that sort of, for where I was in life at the time. I would have been probably about 15, 16, I guess.
Both my parents were music teachers, and my dad was the head of a music service. So this is a peripatetic music service. Basically, he employed instrumental teachers, and they would travel around different schools in the area. And in the late 70s and early 80s, there was a push on music technology education. And this is really in the heyday of kind of the commercially available synths. So every summer holiday, my dad would bring home a whole car full of synths for me to play on. And I always remember getting really excited just before the summer holidays and saying to my dad, "Are you going to bring all this stuff home?"
Chris Calcutt is a really lovely guy.
How I got into synths was, I'm a guitarist by nature. That's what I grew up playing, and it was through effects pedals really, and really kind of tweaking the guitar sound and making it not sound like a guitar. And then the first time I got on a synthesizer, I was just like, yeah, leave all that behind. This can make any sound I want.
I used to play guitar, but I was fascinated by effects pedals. And so I would just sort of spend all my pocket money, paper round money and that sort of thing, saving up to buy, you know, a new pedal and that sort of stuff. And then really, you know, exploring what sounds I could get from the guitar using effects as well.
I've been into electronic music since I can remember. It was kind of through really experiencing it through my parents' record collection. So they were, I guess, in their late teens when the whole kind of new wave synth pop thing happened, and their record collection was full of Human League, Japan, Kraftwerk, Jean-Michel Jarre, Vangelis, everyone from that kind of period. And I remember in particular being fascinated with a Jean-Michel Jarre compilation. And this kind of continued into, I started learning kind of piano and things like that.
Fit like Shakespeare has a mighty future sound.
I've been reading a book. There's an electronics guy called Penfold who has an entire series of books. And one of them was on, you know, build your own synth. And it talked about these mysterious things, VCAs, VCFs, VCOs. And there was a shop in Cambridge called Music Village, which later became Digital Village. walked past there, and in the window there was this grey synth with those mnemonics on it, VCO, VCA, VCF. And I was doing my GCSEs at the time, and one of the things I was looking into was like a little tremolo unit for my GCSE project. And I managed to convince my parents that this synth would make the difference to my tech project, and saved up an awful lot of money and helped pay it. And it was an SH-101, simple one-voice synth, which I've still got, still use. Should we see if it works?
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I was really into Jean-Michel Jarre and Vangelis. And that's what got me into a synthesizer. Like, I was dreaming about those fantastic machines. I always wanted to play with them. And I was going to the music shop, and it's just how I felt in love. Like, I was friends were like into organ and piano, but not really synthesizer. And it was not easy to actually access synthesizer where I'm from, in the center of France. I got into it by playing into synth, like into shops, and that was just like magic. The first time I played with the synth, it was like just wow. Opened just like a whole new world, like for me, of making sound, making noise. It was just like fantastic.
And once I found out that there were these things called synthesizers that these guys were using, and you could create all these fantastic sounds from these strange little boxes and keyboards with loads of knobs and sliders and faders and things like that, I got sucked into that entire world of what is this stuff.
I didn't have a clue what I was doing with them at all, but I plug them in, get the headphones on and sit for hours just making crazy, crazy sounds. Some of those synths I've got today, to this day as well. I mean, for example, one of them was an ARP 2600. I'm a lucky guy, I've actually got an ARP 2600 as well. And also I remember as well a couple of the old Roland synths, the SH-101 and the Juno 106 and that sort of thing as well. So yeah, I mean, I would say my earliest exposure to synthesizers is when these things were actually current, back in the early 80s.
Well, I had a long background in electronics repair anyway, TVs, videos, that sort of thing. Also, I was a sound engineer as well in both live and studio sound. I ran studios and did a lot of live sound. And there was a sort of logical progression, really. And then I just bought some keyboards off some people and that didn't work, and I just repaired them until I just sat there and fiddled with them until they finally did work, and then just moved on from that, really. Most
of the synths that I buy are broken because the prices are going through the roof. They're quite ridiculous. Even 40 ones are now going for serious money. But yeah, I love taking old synths apart and fixing them up. I've got a Juno 106 at home, which is one of the polys that I've done. They're notorious for having voice problems, so I replaced the voice chips in those. But yeah, I love doing that.
This turned into me starting to decide to build my own equipment to try and overcome the financial barrier. That is a complete myth and a complete lie. But it then made me kind of look at what you could do with various bits of electronics to create new sounds, and again, something that people hadn't necessarily heard before, or sounds that weren't typically generated from, the most common synthesizers.
But they have a much more...
That's all right, it's cool.
Hello, Sidewave EMS Vintage Synths. I had a slightly older chap phone me up, And he was a particularly nice, unassuming sort of man, and I thought, and he had a Roland CR78 drum machine. And I thought, oh, it'll be nice, you know, it'd be nice to work for this chap, because I just thought, he's a nice, very nice, particularly nice man. He said, oh, well, my name's Dennis, and I've got this old machine, and it's got sentimental value to me. Anyway, I repaired the machine, everything was absolutely fine. And then suddenly, a sort of penny slightly dropped, and his name, I said, aren't you better known as John Fox? And he was better known as John Fox, and this was the reason it had sentimental value to him, is it was exactly the CR78 that he used to make Metamatic and Underpass and all that, which was a seminal album, and also the use of the CR78 on that was quite an important moment in particularly British electronic music. And so to fix that machine for someone who I particularly admired was quite nice. Okay, let's hear that.
Propaganda, A Secret Wish, fantastic album. All sorts of synths used on there. I think there's a lot of PPG, there's probably Prophet, I don't know what else, but it's still a classic, still really good. Vangelis, Blade Runner soundtrack, but there's also something he did called Boborg, which I was tipped off about a couple of years ago, and that's well worth seeking out. That is littered with CS80, and it's pretty much using the ring mod throughout it. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but from an interest point of view, that's definitely worth checking out. Human League, Dare, Travelogue, they're particularly good albums that are close to my heart from my childhood. Prince famously used the Oberheims, and like 1999 is such a great album. It's just an utter genius, I think. Shame that he's passed away.
Songs of Faith and Devotion, produced by Flood, is a very particularly complete sonic landscape, and the set of songs and the production on it are just really, I guess they probably resonate with a time in my life as well. But I would have to say Japan Tin Drum, rather predictably, which is, there is polysynth stuff in there, but a lot of the lines are actually sort of more mono in nature, and it's more about the building of those sounds and the sounds of the choices of those sounds. And there's something about that even now when you listen to it, it still sounds very, very timeless, at least to me. I mean, obviously to many other people it might sound like 80s tat, but there's a lot worse 80s tat.
Pick the best. Go on, put it on, let's hear it.
Well, one of the most influential and important albums I've ever listened to is White Noise, which is 1969, David Vorhaus and those guys. They double tracked a lot to make things polyphonic. I think music has a right to our children, Boards of Canada, and yeah, my next album.
Yeah, one of my favorite artists is Rival Console. He used like a polysynth, with guitar pedal, to create like his tracks, and along with piano and sound field recording, and he creates those awesome ambience.
A lot of the kind of Scandinavian disco that's coming out, Todd Terhey and Lindstrom, stuff like that, and polysynths feature across those heavily, really kind of, I suppose like vintage sounds, but really brought up with modern production.
Sometimes you're playing with a particular presets and a sound will jump out and it will suddenly be the sound that was used on a particular record, and it just jumps out of you, and it's fascinating. I mean, sometimes you get the drum machines, I mean the CR78 and Blondie's Heart of Glass is a particular rhythm, and it's a preset rhythm on the CR78, and as soon as you play it, it's quite a spooky experience because it just, there it is.
The king of analog polys is generally thought to be the Yamaha CS80. It's one of the first. It's enormous. It's got polyphonic aftertouch, which is fantastic, and it's got quite a clever key mechanism to control that. Of course, it's famously used by Vangelis on some of his soundtrack work, and also by the Radiophonic Workshop for Doctor Who themes, and loads of people have used it.
So I mean, you look at kind of what Korg did with their PS range, it's bonkers, it's absolutely insane. The fact that that stuff's patchable. Patchable polysynths don't really exist. They shouldn't really exist, but they do. And then you look at what Oberheim did with like the 4-voice and the 8-voice.
Oberheim, of course, Oberheim, like the Oberheim 8-voice.
I mean, really, that's a multi-timbral synth, but you can apply it to be a polyphonic synth.
It's quite a crazy instrument in that you've got to set up each of the 8 voices, but it sounds absolutely incredible.
And obviously what Yamaha did with the CS80, what Dave Smith was doing with sequential circuits and the Prophet 5.
Yes, well, I mean, Dave Smith is kind of regarded as the king of polys. He came out with the Prophet 5 in 78ish, 79. That's just ubiquitous at the time. It's still a great synth, very desirable today. I don't think there's much more to say on it than that, other than, yeah, he definitely needs a shout out.
You know, if you look at the 303 and acid house and that sort of thing, you know, the 303 was designed, you know, famously designed as a bass replacement synth, if you like, for bass players in bands. It got forgotten about, and then of course acid house music came along when somebody sort of dialed in that sound and found it was working really well for that type of music. That's a completely happy accident, but you know, it can happen.
Moog has always done it for me as well.
The Memory Moog.
The Memory Moog.
Or Memory Moog. That's another great polysynth as well. Actually, it's one of the other few 3 oscillator polys that I know about.
These are all, you know, big synths at the time, and they still command a hefty price tag now. But I think you also got to give Roland credit for things like the Juno series, the Juno 660, the 106, and bringing affordable poly analogues to people.
Well, Roland, their Juno series was perfect. They were simple, they sounded great, and they had like a really distinctive character.
You know, they're one of the reasons that monosynths kind of went away was the Juno series, and they still sound really good today. The Roland Jupiter series, Jupiter 8, is generally regarded as quite a classic.
The Jupiter 8 was a very useful synthesizer for big touring bands to have, with the balanced outputs and the splits and all of that stuff.
The Jupiter 8 is an absolute all-time classic. I mean, fairly standard classics, really. They're classics for a reason, because they're very good.
But I recently had one here because I was doing a comparison between it and some other synth that was trying to be like a Jupiter 8. And while there's a great physical presence to the 8, it's not all that fabulous as a synthesizer. I mean, it's all right, but there are many other things. I mean, the Prophets are really great.
The early Prophet 5s, you know, such as what's behind me there, were very innovative and they sound wonderful. The Casio Tone MT40, when I was about 13, I suppose, which later on did quite well with the Slang Tang rhythm thing. It's not really a synth, but I liked it, and I still do quite like it.
And in the case of this piece, this was a high organ cluster.
And that was kind of the starting brief, was let's make a polyphonic bass station. Chris had a proposal for doing a new way of perhaps generating oscillators and control for a synth. And it was around the time of the base station, or perhaps when the base station project was just ramping up into mass production.
Chris Huggett, the legend of the synthesizer realm.
Yeah, as I've said before, Chris Huggett is a sort of design hero of mine, and I've used the base station, which I rated. It's great. It's a bargain.
I was all using the base station thinking, oh, it'd be amazing if we had a polyphonic version of this. But as we got into the project, obviously there are things that the base station can't do, like the digital side of things, wavetables and complex LFO control, complex envelope control. It doesn't have a mob matrix. So we looked at the best that we've got from the Ultranova series, and the Supernova series, and the best that we've got from the base station, and we tried to marry the two of these technologies together.
Much of this work can be done equally well with primary school children.
I saw Peak in a closed room with a lot of people watching me a few weeks back, and I spent probably about an hour or so with it, and it felt very, I was talking about that connection, that be able to kind of like take a sound in a direction and go, oh, I could try this, I could try that, and I found it very natural to kind of move in the direction that I wanted. It feels very programmable and very straightforward but complex, and it sounds very organic as well. That's the thing. I think the filters do sound really good, and they say that they've got the based on the base station filters, but they sound completely different to me, and I think they will do, because when you put poly into filters, it's a very different kind of sonic character than a single voice. Plus the effects and the audio rate modulation, it took me to quite a lot of places that I was quite excited about, to be honest. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it and giving it a proper workout.
The first time when I knew that we were making something really good, we just had the first prototypes coming into the office, and our product specialist, Chris Calcutt, he wanted to have a sneak peek. And so we went into our little studio at work, hooked it up to some big speakers, and then just played a sawtooth and swept that filter down with resonance turned up, and we just both looked at each other like with a glint in our eye. That point where I was just like, this is going to be amazing.
Such a powerful instrument, and it sounds great as well. And what you can do with it is it's opening up new possibilities sonically, I think. So, you know, I'm going to have to say that Peak is definitely one of those, in my opinion. 3 oscillator Polysynth, you know, there's very, very few of those around. If you want to go deeper and get under the surface, you know, the modulation matrix is kind of the real power of the synth, you know. It's a modular synthesizer in there if you want it to be. But that's a little bit more deeper, you know, you have to go to the modulation matrix page to access that in the menu. But if you just want a good, solid, subtractive analog synthesizer, you know, all of the controls are on the front panel in front of you.
That's when I knew, okay, this is a good bit of kit to have around and put it in front of people. And then about kind of 15, 20 minutes into really using it for the first time, that's when I started to make sounds with it that I'd always wanted to recreate, but just couldn't find it on any other synth. Even some of the synths back from, you know, the, I guess, late 70s and early 80s, where I'm listening to records and I'm thinking, how did they make that sound? How did they make that sound? Because that's incredible, and I can't figure out how they're doing that. Suddenly I was making all this stuff with Peak, and obviously that wasn't, you know, back there in 81, 82, whenever. But I'm suddenly getting all of these like classic sounds out of it.
And it feels well made. It feels, it doesn't feel like it's about to fall apart, or, you know,
End up on that counter.
Yeah, it's end up on that counter. Another thing to do is sometimes with some of these machines, they don't appear to want to obey the laws of physics. So you have to almost step back and take a very lateral view of some of the repairs. Whereas with something very modern, it's a process.
We've completely overhauled the effects I'm lucky enough to have an Eventide in my little setup at home, which I absolutely love for its mega lush reverb. And when I took this home and I was playing it, turned up the reverb on this, and I was playing again. Oh, better turn off the Eventide and so to just hear this, and realised I wasn't sending to the Eventide. What I was hearing was just Pete.
It's been actually like difficult knowing like what we want to make, and also have the people like to make it like in regards to the spec like we wanted to make. We wanted a beast, and you need a beast of a team to actually make a beast.
The whole kind of sound design process, we started off by creating a playlist on Spotify of just a load of really good synth tracks that we're into currently. That got sent out to all our designers. Some of us like kind of copied the sounds, but then we also just kind of got the feel for the tracks and what kind of sounds are current and what we want the synth to sound like, to give it its own character, and we kind of developed it from there.
Well, I mean, the guys that have put the patches through, you know, the people who've submitted the patches, they're fantastic sounding patches, you know, there's no two ways about it, but occasionally we'll find something that, oh, it'd be nice if it just did that instead. For example, on the Peak, we've got the animate switches here. And one of the criteria when we're doing the patches is we want people to be able to use the animate functions that are on there. And we found a couple that actually sound better if you go to the preset with the animate switched on rather than switch it on afterwards. So, you know, little tweaks like that really. Nothing major to the sounds. There's a bit of leveling that we're going to have to do towards the end of the process as well to get them leveled off correctly. But yeah, that's generally it.
And we'll add echo on the tape. We can do that with this machine.
But I think design is one of the most important aspects of any instrument, really.
I think it's really interesting. There's a real kind of, there's a dilemma. There's the designer's dilemma. You know, as the buying public, people are always saying, oh, why don't you do something new? Why don't you do something new? And yet, if you're faced with something totally new, they'll go, oh, I can't, what on earth were they thinking? You know, we're actually, as musicians and creative people, we're very conservative with a small c. We think we want massive change, but actually when presented with massive change and innovation, we're unlikely to accept it until it's created a sort of momentum.
One thing I've done over recent years is I've kind of moved away from using the computer and have gone kind of all out on the hardware side of things. You know, it's quite regular for people to say now I only use hardware and that sort of stuff, but I've been doing that for quite a long time now, for about 7 years I think. And one of the things I really love about that is the fact that each of the synths is an instrument in its own right. And like any instrument, you know, you don't have one piano lesson and then go away and become a concert pianist. You've got to learn how to play that instrument.
I've chosen to go down an all hardware route for a couple of reasons. The first is that when you're using soft synths on a particular DAW, you get kind of locked into an upgrade cycle. You invariably, no matter how hard you try to keep your computer just for audio, you will use it for other things. And there'll be something that comes along that forces you to do an OS update. And then you've got to update your DAW, and then you've updated your DAW now, you've got to update your plugins now. One of your plugins doesn't work and your session won't load. And I got very, very frustrated by that. I use a computer all day at work. And I found that I just wasn't enjoying making music on a computer the way that I used to enjoy making music on the hardware. You know, I can come here, I mean, okay, this is quite excessive for for most people, this certainly isn't how I started out. I started out with, you know, 1 or 2 keyboards, and that was pretty much it. But I thoroughly used to love my time making music with those, and I just found that I wasn't enjoying it quite so much with software, you know, sort of squinting into a screen.
Now, a lot of great music's been made on a computer, and it can work brilliantly for people, and I think it's a great way to work. I've got no problem with it at all. But for me, I suddenly felt that it just wasn't, what I was doing just didn't feel like music. So I then decided what I did from that point on was to exclusively play live and not do any sequence stuff at all. So to that end, almost all the stuff I did tended to be improvised and tended to be played live. I've taken out on the road synthesizers which you'd have to be certifiable, take out on the road for reliability things, and ironically the only problem I ever had, I think, was with the computer crashing with Ableton Live. All the vintage stuff, including the PPG, were absolutely fine.
Don't get me wrong, software's got its place and I still use software. Really, this is all about getting inspiration for making a track and getting the parts together in the quickest possible time. But if I want to record anything, then yeah, I'll use it on a computer. I'm not a complete Luddite, but there's definitely a place for hardware, but I don't think software can quite get replaced.
If you didn't have money, you couldn't produce good music. You just couldn't. Well, you could produce good music, but you couldn't record it in such a way to be acceptable. You had, like, you know, things like 4-track tape recorders. And the difference between a proper commercial studio and a home studio demo was just night and day. And there was no way around that without money. Now, if you put in the time and the effort and the work, even if you haven't got very much money at all, you can produce something which is going to be comparable to a commercial release. And that is a huge democratisation of music, and that is a really good thing.
Well, ironically, one of the reasons that hardware's come back is there are a lot of producers that have learnt how to use synthesizers, not on hardware but on software, and now realise that they can go to the next step by getting involved with hardware and manipulating what they've learnt on screen on hardware controls in real time.
When you play a great instrument, for me personally, it sends shivers down your spine, literally. And that's what it is. If I play an instrument which is okay, fine, sounds great, that sounds nice. But when you play a really great instrument like, you know, an early Prophet 5, Jupiter 8, it sends shivers down your spine. It really does.
The best relationships I have with synthesizers and other kind of audio equipment is where it's it's kind of like a two-way feedback thing.
I think there has to be some sort of emotional resonance and interchange with you and an instrument. And sometimes, you know, if an instrument is particularly badly designed or there's some choices in there that make you really frustrated, you've got to kind of wait for that to subside so you can get past it and kind of go, oh yeah, but there's this.
And then you think, oh yes, this is it, this is why I'm doing this.
Let's not forget, these are machines, it's true, they're electronic musical instruments, you know. These are the tools that we use to express ourselves. So there's a really strong emotional attachment to them, I think. I have synthesizers that I genuinely love. I've got some things in the studio that I feel that they're part of my family almost, you know. They're really, really important to me and kind of make me, I don't know, make me feel great when I start playing around with them.
That is really the ultimate, is where you have this kind of two-way thing.
The emotional resonance, I think, is very important, because that is what you need to have to create good music. You know, you have to be able to have a sort of, it's like a sort of synaptic connection with an instrument. You know, when you're reaching for something, you know it's going to do something that's going to please you or move you in a certain way.
It's almost like a physiological response that you get, and I think something that's got a great, unique, individual sound to it, really. Preferably something that doesn't blow up every 5 minutes. But yeah, no, it's the shiver down the spine, that actual response. That's what I'm saying to that.
When I reach that, that's kind of when I know that this equipment, I need this, and I need to work with this, because not only is it really quick for workflow, but it's also actually just better for creating music. So I've spent a lot of time with equipment where I haven't necessarily had that.
The other thing is as well, you know, if you consider a hardware instrument, you know, something like Peak, Bass Station, any of these hardware instruments, circuit as well, you know, you're physically connected to these things. You know, you're grabbing hold of parts of it and you're manipulating that. You know, the movement of the hand, you know, that's kind of part of the expression that you're giving it. They may be machines, but you're completely, you know, at one with them when you're working.
It's a really, like, almost organic relationship that is really hard to define, and the only way that I can kind of make an analogy is as if I'm the conductor of an orchestra, and then of course I need to listen to the orchestra to kind of tell them what to do and conduct them generally as a system. That's exactly how I feel if I get that good workflow with a synthesizer. It's a two-way relationship. I'm giving it ideas and it's giving me ideas straight back.
$25 million views.